Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. It is the preview show for this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship and football action. We'll be looking at the football a little bit later, but we'll be starting off with the weekend's Hurling Championship action, because certainly plenty to discuss, plenty to break down. Some big games, some big talking points, as there always is. It was a crazy weekend, obviously, of action with Clare and Cork obviously drawn, Limerick and Tipperary drawn, Leinster, big wins for the likes of Kilkenny, Dublin and Wexford as well. And some big games to run through this weekend. Joined by Matthew Hurley from the Gaelic Statsman podcast, and joined by Liam White here as well to preview all the weekend's action. I suppose, lads, how are we? I suppose, firstly, Matthew, are you over Cork's disappointing ending to the Clare game? Yeah.
It's sinking in now. Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Aaron. Yeah, it's sinking in over the last few days, and obviously there's been a few comments here and back, probably more abuse to Dan Casey than myself in the last few days. I think, I've been calm and things. I've still got a bit of abuse, but look, it's the Munster Championship. That's what you're here for. All the abuse and things like that. But look, another weekend now. Clare play against Waterford and Cork play against Tipp, and comments aside, I think Dan Huston said it on Twitter. This is probably, if you're talking about a Super Sunday in Gaelic Games action, in terms of attendance, in terms of entertainment, you're going to get it this Sunday with the Clare and Waterford game, and of course, Cork and Tipperary and Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And I was hearing from Dennis Hurley actually that tickets are good because Tipperary actually sold, or they didn't have tickets sold in their club section or whatever, so they're going back into the system. So there's actually going to be more Cork fans than anticipated on Sunday as well. So it's going to be a large crowd from the Rebel County this Sunday. I don't know, will that affect Tipperary? We'll have to see on Sunday. But Clare against Waterford should be an interesting game as well. 2 packed houses, 2 brilliant games upcoming, as I said, as well. So definitely looking forward to the weekend's games. Of course, the football as well. Armagh and Tyrone. There is the argument of the game being on GA+. That's again, we talk about TV rights and things like that, but look, it's just the way it is. But that's probably the highlight of the football weekend. But yeah, a lot of good games to look forward to, a lot of interesting games to look forward to, and looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liam, how's things with yourself? I suppose also a disappointing result of the weekend as well, but I suppose maybe a little bit different circumstances.
Yeah, and Arsenal are currently drawing to Crystal Palace, so my week's not getting much better as we speak. But yeah, no, thanks for having me on again. Appreciate it. Yeah, I suppose a tough defeat in the end. I suppose coming down the home stretch, I thought we might have had it until Ronan Hayes' goal. He was like, it was amazing to me that he didn't even start the game. Like, he's a player that's fully capable of starting for Dublin, but look, he made the impact that you needed, and Dublin finished the game strong. But it was a great learning curve for us. It was great to be back playing Leinster hurling for the first time in 7 years. And they've just brought out a video package now. Looking forward to the weekend game against Galway, which I'm thoroughly looking forward to. And given how we played last weekend, given how Galway played last weekend, and throughout the league campaign, I suppose weirder things have happened. You never know what can happen. But yeah, look, like Matthew said, last weekend's games were terrific. The hurling games, there was some good football games. There were some not so good football games. Like I said, the Cork and Kerry game was a joy to watch. I thought Monaghan Donegal, particularly in the second half, it fully lived up to the hype. So yeah, no, looking forward to this weekend's games as well, and yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into it.
100%. Yeah, a few comments flying in here already. Sean says Waterford flying under the radar could cause an upset or two, and Brian says this is a blockbuster of a weekend of Munster hurling, if anything like. And Sean says low key looking forward to the Leinster Championship for the first time in a while. Bizarrely, I think he might mean the football and not the hurling, which is mad. You know what I mean? But yeah, we'll get onto that a little bit later. But yeah, look, starting off obviously with the weekend's hurling and looking at the Munster Hurling Championship, we'll start with Cork versus Tipperary. Matthew, as you were saying, in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, more Cork fans there, which was expected. I think last year as well, didn't you? When you played them in Thurles, there was more Cork fans there as well. So, like, I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, these Tipperary fans just aren't really buying into this. You would think maybe after the Limerick game, more of them would want to show up, but for whatever reason, they don't. They don't want to make the trip to the real capital, as you call it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's just on Tipperary. It is a kind of a strange one considering. Like I thought, the noise from GA Plus the stream anyway. It seemed like there was a lot of Tipperary fans there. They were getting behind the team when John McGrath hit the back of the net twice. And there was some good performances of the Tipp team last week, and they really showed it up to Limerick. The likes of Jake Morris, Owen Conley from the back was outstanding. Brian O'Mara, Darren McCarthy. There is obviously the argument with Darren McCarthy and Sam O'Farrell. I think they're playing in the under-20s as we speak as well. And there's an argument that they won't play in the seniors as well. I don't know what the ruling is specifically, but if they weren't to play this Sunday against Cork, I think that's going to be a massive loss, especially Darren McCarthy, who's turning into an absolute gem of a player, obviously. Sam O'Farrell has been impressive in his own right for Tipp as well this season. So if they weren't to play this weekend, I'd definitely give Cork more of a chance. In terms of Cork, you look at the performance against Clare, the second half especially, there is much to be improved on, as much as Clare were obviously going in Cork doing the tackles and things like that, and they did roil us up a bit. We kind of had to, be strong in kind of that and be the bigger man in those sorts of instances, like Shane Barrett getting sent off. Looking back at it, yes, David, it really kind of coerced him into it, but at the same time, it's a loss of the head, and you can't probably do that in this high stakes of a hurling game. He's suspended obviously for this weekend. That would mean Dermot Healy would have to come in, or Shane Kingston, or some other player like that. So it's a big onus of pressure on those players coming in. I think Pat Ryan has to learn as well, Alan Connolly and Patrick Horgan. As long as there's even 10 points in the game, you have to keep them on the pitch, because you seen what happened in the Clare game last week. You took them off too early, and then Clare ran us under on us after that. I don't know what's the story with Rob Downey. He went off with a strap knee, I think, last week against Clare. I don't know what's the story. Is he going to come out? Is he not going to play this weekend? If he's not going to play, I think Kieran Joyce probably has to go into the centre-back role. Probably Tim O'Mahony in at the number 5 position, or he could easily put Neil Mullins or Cormac O'Brien there. It's going to be interesting to see that what Pat Ryan does there. But there is a lot of learning curves in the Clare game last week. You would think Cork will improve much better, obviously, coming into this game against Tipp. They're at home. You look at the crowd numbers around this Cork hurling team at the moment compared to the Tipperary hurling team. But by no means this is not going to be easy meet. Tipperary are a decent side. They showed it against Limerick last weekend. There's going to be no easy games in Munster. We'll mention Waterford in a second against Clare as well. But yeah, it's not going to be an easy game. You would expect Cork to win at home, considering the fan base that they do have. But it's not going to be easy meet, not by long stretch at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe before a ball was pucked, maybe with Tipperary, you probably would have earmarked this at home and thinking, this is a game absolutely we can win, and maybe even win comfortably. We see how important score difference is as well, but haven't seen how good Tipperary looked. Are they going to be a side now, especially after the draw with Limerick and everything else, and how well they played? All of a sudden, it doesn't appear inconceivable that Tipperary actually get something from this game.
No, not really. It doesn't at all. Tipperary are a very good side, as I mentioned there. They're a young side as well, which is probably all the better, because even if they don't get out of Munster this year, there's always in the next few years, because the likes of Darren McCarthy, yes, Noel McGrath is over the hills, really. Ronan Mara, you could argue as well, to a lesser extent, John McGrath. But when you look at the star man, the last day, the man of the match from GA Plus, Darren McCarthy, is actually only 19. And it's actually hard to believe in its own right. I had to look it up, and I was thinking, this guy's 19 years of age. It's absolutely incredible. Sam O'Farrell is still only under 20 as well. Jake Morris is still only in his mid-20s. You've plenty of young players in that team as well. Alan Toynan still has another few years left in him. Even if Barry Hogan, calls it quits in the next few years, you still have Rhys Shelley, who's a decent enough shot stopper to come in. Owen Connolly's a young player, so is Brian O'Mara, just come out of UL from the Fitzgibbon Cup team in the last few seasons. So Tipp have a young team, and that is a positive for them in the next few years, even if they don't make it out of Munster this season. So yes, Cork will have it difficult this weekend. They probably will be the favourites, but if I was a Tipp hurling fan at the moment, it probably won't show this Sunday, considering the support for Tipp hurling. But I'd be very, very positive in terms of the way it's developing. Obviously Liam's good old County Offaly beat them in the under-20 final last year, but that could have gone either way. Tipp won the Munster Championship, and they are a very good team with a lot of young players coming through in that team. So I do think even if it doesn't work out this year, there is a lot of things that can happen with Tipperary hurling in the next few years, and there definitely is an All-Ireland within Tipperary in the next 5 seasons. Maybe not this season, maybe this season's too soon for them, but certainly for this Cork team, and Seamus made a very good point as well on this about All-Ireland contenders. It seems like this Cork team, the All-Ireland's time is now. For Tipperary, it's probably 4 or 5 years down the line. So Cork probably need to make much more of it than Tipperary do, in my opinion, looking at this game in particular. But for Tipperary, even if they lose this game, let's say they lose this game by 5 or 6 points at the weekend, I don't think it's necessarily a negative for Tipp, considering they drew against Limerick at home. They still have games against Clare and Waterford they have to play. So there is still some positives in Tipperary hurling. They might fall short this weekend. They are going to give a good count to themselves, I'm sure. But you would imagine Cork will get over the line, but I think it'll be a lock. I do think this game will be closer to the league final. Tipperary weren't at their best that day. Darren McCarthy wasn't at his best. Obviously, like John McGrath wasn't at his goal scoring best that day in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. You would imagine after the Limerick game, he would have got more confidence. So Tipperary will be much better. There's no doubt about that. And Cork will have to be on their toes, obviously, to get the win in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean says here, Tipp are big and physical, similar to Limerick, and have improved a lot in their shooting from last year. Cork need to win after last week. German Healy is a great player to bring in with Kingston as an impact sub, along with a massive Rebels turnout. I back Cork. Yeah, like I suppose just on that, Liam, like it feels like Cork are massive favourites, and it feels like all the pressure is on them. Where it feels like with Tipperary, like they're coming in this almost with nothing to lose. Like it feels like even if they lose the game by 5 or 6, like no one's really going to bat an eyelid. So like that probably suits Tipperary down to the ground as well, like to be coming in with little pressure. And like to be fair to Cork, I feel like they've never really looked like a team that have wilted under the pressure or anything like that. And obviously there are different circumstances at a Clare game in terms of being down to 14 men and everything else. But it does feel like there's way more pressure on Cork than there is Tipp, and maybe that might suit Tipp to maybe cause an upset.
Yeah, it really is a curious encounter, really, because of how both teams drew their games last weekend. And you'd be believing that Cork would be itching to right the wrongs, essentially, of last weekend, if that's the best way to write it. I suppose Tipperary would be aiming to show that the performance against Limerick was something to build on, and to also produce a response to the league final display, which, let's be honest, they'd have been very disappointed by as well. And especially go back to the ground where they lost it as well. I've no doubt Liam Cahill will have been studying Cork's first half performance to see how they can tamper the influence of Patrick Horgan, Alan Connolly and Brian Hayes, who just, they were causing absolute havoc in that full forward. Particularly, I think it went a bit unnoticed with how Patrick Horgan was sucking the Clare full back line out wide, and leaving space for Brian Hayes. Because don't get me wrong, Hayes did well to finish the strikes, but the work of Connolly and Horgan in there was fantastic in the build-up to that. I don't think leaving Adam Hogan on Alan Connolly for me was the smartest idea. Brilliant player, but I just think you need a real big guy on someone like Alan Connolly to tamper, because he is big and strong. You saw how he took his goal in the league final. And Owen Connolly can be potentially fitting that role a bit better, but then again, you saw what happened in the league final. So, look, Cork still showed some flaws at the back. Peter Duggan caused such trouble as a target man. Sometimes that high ball in just works instead of trying to play it low and leaving a chance for the cornerback to maybe flick it away or something like that. And yeah, like Matthew said, Shane Barrett gone this weekend is massive. He's one of Cork's most consistent players. Could arguably have been hurler of the year last year if Cork did go on to win the All-Ireland. And for me, you do wonder who comes in. I do genuinely think Diarmuid Healy's the man to bring in. I think he's a terrific player. I saw his performance against Kilkenny, and I genuinely think he's one of the top young players in the country. I think he could cause this Tipperary defence all sorts of issues. But then you also wonder, does Decky Dalton get brought back in? Do you bring Darragh Fitzgibbon back to the midfield, even though he's doing very, very well at centre forward at the moment? There's the argument for Micheál Mullins as well. Could he possibly come in as well? So there's a lot of questions for Pat Ryan in terms of his team selection on Sunday, which will be interesting. But it still does show the bench maybe didn't have the same impact last weekend as you'd maybe had hoped, but it is still a very, very strong panel. It's still the depth that Cork have at the moment is serious. It's the best panel they've had in years, in my opinion. So yeah, I think if Cork are to be All-Ireland winners or absolute genuine contenders, they'll have to win this game and show that the second half against Clare was just a freak show. And they do need to keep 15 men on the field as well. And like you said, for Tipperary, it feels like maybe they are building, and that maybe they'll be looking at 2027, 28, 29 for a time when they might be looking to win an All-Ireland, maybe next year or the year after, to maybe win a Munster title or to push on in that. So, but yeah, no, it will be an interesting game. I think it'll be a bit closer than what we saw in the league final. Like, you could kind of tell in the second half that the most important thing for them was not getting lads sent off or lads injured in a way. So when they knew what the result was going to be. So yeah, no, I think it's going to be a cracking game. I'm really looking forward to it. I do expect Cork to come out of it. Like you said, there's a lot more pressure on them to win, but I certainly think Tipperary could give them socks of it at the weekend.
Yeah, what are you thinking for a prediction then, Matthew?
Yeah, I think Cork should win by 4 or 5 points, but knowing what happened last week, I could be eating my words on Monday.
Yeah, what do you think, Liam, in terms of a prediction then?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Cork. I think they might win it by maybe. I think they might get a couple of goals. They've got a lot of goals in the previous couple of games. If they can keep Tipperary out as well, like if you can keep Darren McCarthy out, if you can keep John McGrath out, especially after the weekend he had last weekend, then I think they should come away with maybe a 5, maybe a 6 point win.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. I think it might be a 6 to 7 point win there. We have Waterford versus Clare. Clare making the trip to Walsh Park. Liam, I'll come to you on this one first. I mean, it's, I suppose, for Clare, after bouncing back and responding like they did, obviously, to nearly win the game, and maybe sort of silencing the critics and the doubters a little bit after. A lot of people may be thinking that they'd be, falling flat after a poor season. But going away to Waterford, and like, it does feel like a massive banana skin as well, because Waterford are, like, don't get me wrong, I think if you were to do a power rankings of the teams in Munster, you'd probably have Waterford 5th. But I don't think there's a lot between them. And even last year, like, there was only a point between these two last year, from what I remember.
Yeah, and there was a controversy as well over that final 65 as well. So literally, it was a very even game. Clare started strong, Waterford came back into it, and I think maybe a draw in the end would have been a fair result. Waterford were very unlucky not to get out of Munster last year. So I suppose maybe they're trying to get a bit better at this round robin series, because they've never liked it at all, really. But yeah, Waterford would have certainly learned a lot about Clare last weekend, I feel. They'll be on guard to know that Clare don't lie down no matter the circumstances. Waterford will need to be fully awake for 70 minutes, and they'll need to be coming into this game a lot fresher than Clare, having had the opening weekend off. I just worry for Waterford in a way, though. Like, they are a side who absolutely, they would fancy their chances in Leinster. Like, they absolutely would. If you were to put them in the Leinster Championship, it would be a surprise to no one if they reached the final, or at least minimum got 3rd spot. They'd absolutely fancy their chances. But having said that, I was a small bit worried about their performances in the league. They've never enjoyed the round robin series, like I said, in Munster, despite nearly getting out last year. I think they performed average enough against Dublin, I'll be honest with you, and they got the job done in the end. But that red card, was it for Cian O'Sullivan? That just did not help them. Didn't help Dublin whatsoever, and they finished strongly there. They had the league final won after 55 minutes. They did, but I can't imagine Peter Creeley would have been too impressed with how his side finished the game. And with the way Clare play, Waterford will want to build up an insurmountable lead in order to get a win here at home as well. Because as we saw last weekend, Clare were 12 points down at half time. They came back, and they could easily have won the game in the end. So Clare will need to push on from their second performance. They'll need to feed Peter Duggan in high ball. Tony Kelly, Aidan McCarthy will need to be watched. I do need to see Adam Hogan perform this weekend, because I don't think he's played his best stuff so far this season, whether he's Mark Desi Hutchinson or Stephen Bennett, Patrick Fitzgerald. I think he needs to step up and really prove why he is, as of last year, one of Ireland's best cornerbacks. Because he had a tough afternoon last weekend against Cork. There's no point questioning that. So yeah, no, it's gonna be a tough game for Clare. But like you said, Clare have sort of had the edge on Waterford over the last couple of years, bar the 1 or 2 wins Waterford had, especially in the 2020 All-Ireland quarter final down in Cork. So, but yeah, no, I certainly would give Waterford a fighting chance here, and I think it will be a game that will go down to the wire, especially with a home Waterford crowd. But I just think Clare might just have a bit too much quality, even without Shane O'Donnell. I think they'll have too much quality for Waterford at the weekend.
Yeah, Matthew, what are you thinking? Having seen Clare do what they did to yourselves, obviously in the flesh, what would you be thinking? Would you be thinking they'd have too much for Waterford as well?
Stranger things have happened, though. I do think, like, Clare were very, very poor in the first half, and they brought the blood and thunder in the second half, and they got the bit of luck that they needed. Yes, Barrett sending off was correct, but if Cork don't go down to 15 or 14 men, what would happen? So I'd be worried from a Clare point of view when that kind of stakes. At the same time, though, I do think Tony Kelly performed excellent. So did David Reedy. Both of them at 100% shot accuracies last Sunday. I think Tony Kelly took 5 shots, converted them all. David Reedy converted all 3 of his. Aidan McCarthy seemed to be decent enough on the frees as well. And Clare seemed to be doing well in the shooting stakes, and that was a positive for them. The thing is, this Waterford team, and I don't really know if you realise that last year in Munster, they were unbeaten at home. They beat Cork and they drew against Tipp. And let's be honest, the draw against Tipp, they should have won that game. There is a performance in this Waterford team that, like, I'm thinking from logistically, like the home games they have this year are against Clare and against Limerick. Realistically, I think Limerick still have a few gears to go up on. So I don't think Waterford are beating Limerick at home. So if you're being realistic about it, which game would Waterford target at home? Would they target Clare or would they target Limerick? I think they'd target Clare, because I think Clare kind of have an element in them where they kind of drop the ball. Like, I looked at them, yes, they're top of the Munster Championship in the round robin stage, and that John Forte did in the table. But then when you look at the score difference, Limerick and Cork have the capacity to put teams away at ease. Clare's score difference, despite their wins and despite being top of the table, is plus 24. That indicates to me they do win tight games. There's going to be one of these days where somebody catches them out. You looked at Waterford's result against Cork last year, and it was a total ambush. And that was also the first day out for them in the Munster Championship. The signs are all pointed towards a Waterford win. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like Waterford, if they are to cause a rift in this Munster Championship, they would have to beat Clare this weekend if they have to give themselves any chance of getting out of this Munster group. Because you have Cork away and you have Tipp away. And Tipp are no slouches this season. Cork, you would imagine with the Cork fan base behind them, the Parky Keeve, that they'll beat Waterford, especially in round 5. I think there is a possibility Waterford could win this. And I've said this throughout the league, and I've said this before the Munster Championship even began, after the league. Yes, there were some stages where Waterford performed badly in the league, but there are a few points in this. Ty de Borca wasn't there for the group stages of the league. He came back for, obviously, the game against Offaly in the final. He might have come a bit before that as well. But you could see the difference of the Waterford defence when they were on it. They became 2 foot taller even with Ty de Borca back there. It'll be interesting to see if Austin Gleeson's back. If he is back, that's a huge boost for Waterford. If those 2 guys do start for Waterford, I think they have a massive chance this weekend. And I know Clare are doing well without Shane O'Donnell. Tony Kelly, David Reedy did well. Aaron Shanahan was a colossal figure when he came on. Peter Duggan was outstanding the other day. But there's a world where I can see Waterford getting a smash and grab win here.
Yeah, and I actually agree with you. I actually think Waterford will win this game. I think the home advantage is huge, a bit like what they did against Cork last year. And I felt like Clare had to give so much to come back in that Cork game, and I just have a feeling that Waterford might catch some cold a little bit. But Sean agrees here as well. He says, I'm back in Waterford causing upset. Clare were largely brought back in the Cork game because of a red card. They also looked toothless in the forward line in the first half. Tim says here, I've been more worried about Waterford than anyone else in Munster this year, especially having to go there. They nearly beat us in Ennis last year. And Tim says, of course, there's a possibility in Munster. There's nothing between the teams on any given day. Yeah, like it's going to be very, very close. Brian says here, can't believe what I'll be missing on Sunday if last Sunday's brilliant games are anything to go by. Yeah, no, absolutely. But my plan is to hopefully get up to Portlaoise a little bit earlier, and then hopefully catch a bit of Waterford Clare in a pub somewhere. But I'm gonna back a Waterford win there. Liam's going for the Clare win, and Matthew's going for a Waterford win as well. So let us know your thoughts on that in the comments below. We've got Dublin versus Wexford taking place in the Leinster Hurling Championship in Parnell Park. Liam, this feels like a massive game, I think, for both, really. I feel like whoever can come through this and win this probably has third place at a minimum, but could maybe be looking towards the potential Leinster final, given the form of Galway.
Yeah, I actually think whoever wins this game will get to the Leinster final. Genuinely, I don't see Galway kind of proven after. Well, you can never judge anything after the first round in a way because there's still so many games to go. But after watching Galway last weekend, I certainly don't think they'll be in the Leinster final. Even if they were to beat us this weekend, I don't see them getting past Dublin or Wexford at this stage. I think they have a lot of issues to work on. But just in terms of this game, look, Niall O'Callaghan would have been delighted to have gotten a win last weekend, especially the way they won it as well, because they were up against it for a long time, but they finished very strong. Now they do have Donald Burke potentially out this weekend. Danny Sutcliffe went off injured as well, which will be massive losses for them. You probably imagine that Ronan Hayes will probably come straight into the team. You have Conal O'Reen who could come into the team, although he was playing under 20 tonight against Antrim. But, he's certainly a player that would be good enough to come into the team. You have Colin Curry there. So Dublin do have their options, absolutely. And yeah, look, Dublin kind of playing out from the back last weekend. It kind of led to their downfall at times. At times, it felt like they were kind of handing us scores. They were very good under the high ball. Chris Crummy was a big, massive difference at centre back. So, and him going up against Lee Chin will be a very, very tasty battle as well. You wouldn't bet on who'd come out on the right side of that, especially with the way Chin is playing at the moment. And especially with Chin as well. When he performs, Wexford are a much better team. You saw that when he came back against Clare in the league, how much of an influence, or just him being there, how much the level from Wexford went up. They'll need him to perform this weekend if they're to get anything away from Parnell Park. They are missing Jack O'Connor. He's got the red card last weekend, which is a massive, massive blow for them. But they still have the likes of Rory O'Connor. They still have the Burns as well, who took his goal very well against Wexford as well, or against Antrim. So, it will be a very interesting battle. Parnell Park suits Dublin down to the ground. I think I said Wexford would edge this. I think 2 weeks ago. I'm actually probably leaning towards a draw. These lot drew last year. Now Dublin got 2 late goals. Wexford probably should have won that game on the day down in Wexford Park. But I think they're two very evenly matched teams. And I think if both these teams' best players perform to the level that we know that they can, and especially with the Dublin, I think Dublin have more to give in attack than Wexford do. I think Wexford, they have Lee Chin, they have the O'Connors, but then I think if you go through the Dublin attack, you have Ronan Hayes, you have Cian O'Sullivan. I think AJ Murphy is a player who could also potentially start this weekend. Sean Curry had an excellent game against us last weekend. So I think Dublin might have just a bit more to give in attack. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting battle. The midfield battle will be very interesting too. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to hopefully try and get to watch this before I go into O'Connor Park. And I actually might be leaning towards a draw, but I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them came away with the win.
Yeah, Sean says here, back in the Dubs, they're Wexford's bogey team. Yeah, we do have a great record against them over the last couple of years. Brian says, given the performance and how flat Galway were last week, I expect the winner of Dublin Wexford to reach the final. Home advantage and mid and Parnell Park should give shed to Dublin. I do like the sound of a draw as well. I think a draw could be very likely. I do worry that Wexford are probably due a win against us at the same time as well. They've been a little bit unlucky maybe in the last couple of years, just with a few different breaks of the ball, and Dublin have been able to kind of get results here and there. But Matthew, what would you be thinking for this one?
I think this is a Dublin win written all over, Darren. I don't, to be honest with you, Wexford, other than, yes, Lee Chin scored 16 points, amazing tally last week, but let's be realistic, other than Lee Chin and Rory O'Connor, and, Conor McDonald doesn't seem to be playing any part this season. You look at the top scorers chart in the last few years, especially last year, other than those guys, where are the scores going to come from? I'd be worried from a Wexford point of view there, and Liam makes a very good point about the Dublin forwards there. The likes of Cian O'Sullivan, AJ Murphy has a potential to fire. Colin Curry, if Sean Curry comes off the bench, he has a potential as well. Donald Burke is an excellent forward. So is Ronan Hayes. Obviously scored that goal against Offaly and well taken. Dublin, I think, have more attacking threats than Wexford do. Yes, Conor Hearn scored 3 points the last day, but I feel like that was a kind of a flash in the pan. And Antrim, at stages, were very, very competitive against Wexford, I thought. And it was just kind of Lee Chin kind of getting them through. And that was a game that Wexford had at home. And Liam made a great point in your podcast last week, saying that Antrim don't travel well. But they seem to be pretty comfortable enough in that game against Wexford. So yeah. I would be worried about Wexford. Look at their league form as well. They don't seem to be gelling particularly well. People talked about Galway last week against Kilkenny, but it's different opponents there. Kilkenny have won the last few Leinster championships. Antrim are one of the favourites to go down. And Wexford massively struggled at stages against Antrim. So I'd be worried about Wexford. For Dublin, if they get the defeated boys firing, I think that has the potential of a Dublin win written all over it. And they do have some excellent players. Obviously, as Liam mentioned, Chris Crummy is an excellent defender to have in their disposal. And the added bonus as well, Parnell Park. Dublin love playing there. I think genuinely, Aaron, it's a blessing in disguise that you're playing in Parnell Park rather than Croke Park, because it actually suits the players better and it suits kind of the game better in terms of a spectacle, because the fans will get behind the team as well. I think that's all the elements there. I do think it's a Dublin win written all over it. I'm going to say Dublin by about 4 points.
Yeah. No, I think the Croke Park experiment was 2 years ago. It didn't work at all. Funny enough, I think we actually beat Wexford in Croke Park. I actually think we beat them away from home that year. But we did have, I think we drew with Galway in Croke Park. From what I remember.
Won that game as well.
Yeah, and I think we were 10 or 11 points up in that match, which was crazy, and Galway came back. But I'm gonna back Dublin. I'm gonna go by the smallest margins. I'm gonna go by a point. I do agree with you though as well. I think Dublin's attacking talent is definitely there. We've a good knack of kind of coming through these games. Parnell Park obviously makes a huge difference as well. And yeah, there probably is a slight over-reliance on Leach-In for Wexford. The only thing I would say, though, is that Leach-In, in my opinion, is the best hurler on the pitch, and probably by a good distance, in my opinion. So that's, do you know what I mean? You're talking about a really, really good hurler there, in my opinion. But yeah, no, I am going to back Dublin to come through it. You've got Offaly versus Galway. There was a comment earlier mentioning that this game isn't on TV. The Dublin-Wexford game is on GA+. But this match isn't on TV. And Sean said here, what does Liam think of Offaly not being on TV again in a massive game against Galway? Not a fan of either, but I'm pissed about it. I suppose you'll be at the game, but in general, yeah, it is quite disappointing that a lot of people won't get to see this anywhere.
Yeah, and especially for someone like my granddad who would have gone to games for 50, 60 years now, he can't watch it on TV anywhere. I keep getting messages every single day from him and my aunties and everyone, and even my own mother, just saying, is this on Clubber? Is this on YouTube? Is this anywhere to be seen? And as I said to them, nope, not anywhere. It's the radio you're gonna have to listen to, or just have us ringing you. Yeah, there's no Offaly championship game being shown anywhere this year, which is I'm a small bit surprised, and I'm a small bit let down by that, because you're thinking, should every team not get to be shown at least once? But look, it is the way it is the way it is at the moment. I do think, and me and Matthew have even mentioned this from time to time as well to each other off screen, that the League of Ireland TV system should be brought in at some stage where you can access every single game, because they have the cameras at all these games as well. You'd have, even if you had to throw it on Clubber, get one cameraman, get one commentator. Even if it wasn't a great commentator, it could be a biased commentator for all we cared. But people just want to watch the game. They don't care who's speaking at it. They don't care what they're saying. They could be saying the most outrageous things, but if they're showing the action, then people are happy. But yeah, look, that's a story for another day. Anyways, in terms of the game, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be an interesting battle, considering how poor Galway were last weekend. And even in the league, it feels like they've brought some of their form from the league into the championship, because even with their wins, over Clare, over Wexford, and even over Kilkenny in the league, I think you saw at the weekend the vast difference between Kilkenny and Galway from the league game to the championship game. Galway beat Clare in the league, but Clare were not at it at all in the league, and they bet Wexford by 2 points, and sure, Wexford had a very poor home record as well in the league, and you could see, I feel now they'll be a bit more of a different opposition than what they were a couple of months, even a few weeks ago. So yeah, no, it's going to be like last weekend. I mean, you saw the likes of Conor Whelan was just anonymous. I can't say that word. Anonymous last weekend against Kilkenny. They were very poor at the back. The goal, especially the first goal they conceded, was a huge blunder by Fahy in the net. So yeah, it's going to be they had no Evan Nyland last weekend either. I don't know whether he's out injured or if he was just, I doubt he was even rested, but that's a massive loss for them, even from a free taking perspective. So yeah, no, Galway will have to prove a lot this weekend if they're to show that they are essentially the second best side in Leinster, and especially after the way that last year went, they'll really want to prove their worth this weekend. For us, I think it's a massive opportunity if we can get a crowd into Tullamore, and especially this is our first game in Leinster at home in 7 years. Like the last time we played Galway in the Leinster Championship, they were All Ireland champions, and ironically, it was even enough at halftime. I think it was 2-9 to 1-7, and they ended up winning 5-18 to 2-15. It sounds like a hammering, but it wasn't, considering what we ended up getting from Dublin and Wexford that year. It was was actually nearly kind to us, to be honest with you. But I don't expect it to be like that this time around. I think we can actually give them a good chunk of it. You think, will Adam Screeney be fit this weekend? I'm not 100% sure. Probably could have maybe done with him last weekend just to bring on for even 5-10 minutes. It might have been, they actually might have helped us, but whether we'll risk him this weekend or not, with some other 20 games coming up and some later rounds in Leinster to come, I'm not, I'm not 100% sure. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see if we'll keep the same starting 15 as last weekend. Galway's big problem will be having to deal with the likes of Oisin Kelly. Like he caught a world of ball last weekend. He took his goal very well. Killian Sampson had a very good game. Brian Dignan is, becoming the real, in a way, target man for us in terms of scores. He got a couple from play last weekend as well. So Charlie Mitchell performed well last weekend, worked very hard, and was probably harshly taken off. But yeah, there's it's a massive weekend for Offaly. I could sound biased, and it's probably my my heart talking more than my brain, but I'm actually going to back us to win by 2 points. I just think, you know what, we're due a massive win at some stage, and the crowd, if we can get a good crowd into Tullamore, if we can stay within Galway throughout the game, because Galway, even the last couple of games, have not been great for scoring from play either. Like I was at the Limerick game that they played. I think the score was 118 to 8 points from play, or it was like 123 to 8 points from play. And that's very, very poor by the standard of Galway, considering the players that they do have. So I'm actually going to back Offaly to win by 2 points and probably get roasted for it on Monday morning if we don't win. But sure, that's why we're here talking about it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it actually does have the makings of a shock. Like, it's absolutely one of those games like you could check the score and be like, Offaly have won. And it would be a surprise. It would be a shock, but you can see it happening. Like you have seen more often than not, these shocks happen more and more. Like recently over the last couple of years with Antrim beating Wexford, with Carlow drawn with Kilkenny. Like if those can happen, I don't see any reason why Offaly can't go and beat Galway. And Matthew, as we were saying, like Galway looks so poor against Kilkenny. They were so flat. They barely looked up for it. It was the same last year as well in the Leinster Championship. Like, when you're looking at the record over the last 2 seasons in Leinster, in the league as well, it's very, very poor. And like Offaly are buzzing. Like they'll have absolutely nothing to fear. And if they can get a run on Galway early, like especially with Galway having a lack of confidence as well, like it genuinely could be an Offaly win this weekend.
And as well as that, kind of the turnout, and we talked about this kind of element with Tipperary, the turnout of the fans with Galway. Like even looked at even last year against Dublin when they needed to win, hardly anybody turned out in Pearse Stadium. And he looked at the attendance in Nolan Park last week, 8,000, and most of that was Kilkenny fans. I feel like, and Liam makes a good point about the Tullamore factor. If Offaly get a huge fan base behind them, because this is what they need, because I was looking at Scorpio there about their fixtures just as a matter of interest. This is Offaly's only home fixture before Antrim, which, to be honest, I think that should be a slam dunk and a win for Offaly. No disrespect, obviously, to Antrim. But you have Kilkenny and Wexford away from home there. You would think this is the game where the Offaly fans have to get behind their team here. And you look at, in contrast, you look at Galway, there's hardly anybody coming out for this Galway side. Obviously, Evan Nyland, as you mentioned, out. Carl Mannion scored 10 points the last day. Good tally. But other than that, John Fleming with 2 points, Keenan Fahy 2 points, Conor Cooney. And Conor Cooney was a sub coming on to 2 points. That's just not enough. It really isn't. Like even the likes of Declan McLaughlin, Conor Whelan, who would be considered Galway's most lethal forwards in the quarter forward positions, only scored a point each, which isn't great. And Galway's plan against Kilkenny was kind of to isolate Conor Whelan, put the ball into him and see what he could do. And Conor Whelan only scored 1 point the last day, which doesn't breed confidence at all. There is an argument, yes, Kilkenny are probably the standard bearers in Leinster, and maybe that was only one game and Galway will improve, as they did Leeds, to be fair. The game against Tipperary, they got slaughtered, but then the next week against Kilkenny, they win that game. And then they beat Clare, albeit a Clare team that weren't really caring about the league, but still Galway proved the doubters wrong and shut them up. There is a potential for that to happen this weekend. I feel like, and as you both mentioned there, I think if you look at the scoreline on Twitter or whatnot, and you see Offaly in front with about 10 or 5 minutes to go, you actually wouldn't be shocked because of how Galway are going at the moment and how the youth are doing so well at Offaly. It would be interesting to see if Adam Screedy does play in this game. He probably won't start, let's be honest, with the injury issues that he had throughout this year so far, plus the under-20 commitments there as well. But you'd imagine still in the forward line, you have Brian Doyton in there, you have Charlie Mitchell, you still have some brilliant forwards who on their day can let rip. So I do think, like, Offaly have all the kind of ingredients to cause a shock in this one. The development of the youth system there, some good players, some risky hurlers, and obviously a well-organised team as well. So I do think Offaly have a massive chance this weekend. I'd agree with Liam. I do think Offaly will win this. I think they'll win it by a point or two. I genuinely think. I look at Galway, especially in the Kilkenny performance last week. It didn't breed me with any confidence. And you look at the support coming out for this Galway team as well. That's even more of a worrying factor. I think this is a win over. I think this could be a win for Offaly this weekend, and probably the first real shock of the championship this year.
Yeah, Tim says they have a great chance to beat Galway. Sean says Offaly for the W there. Long due win in the Leinster Hurling Championship, and Galway seem mediocre. Then again, Galway had a bad league opener but grew into it. However, Galway seem mentally fragile. And as you say, if Offaly start well, we can't see much of reaction like we saw with Clare. Yeah, like it's a tough one. I want to back Offaly as well. Like I have a feeling it might be one of them games where Galway sneak it by like 1 or 2 points, and it's one of them games where Offaly come really, really close, but Galway maybe just with that extra bit of experience maybe come through it. But at the same time, like Galway do look so mentally fragile. So if it was a close game, I could actually probably see Offaly nicking it. So, do you know, I'm going to back a draw. I'm going to sit on the fence. But I think a draw is a reasonable enough one there. Last game in Leinster then is Antrim versus Kilkenny. Liam, I know the Corrigan Park factor always plays a part here, but like you would be expecting Kilkenny to win this fairly comfortably. I know Kilkenny, like I look back to that Carlow result last year, which was kind of bizarre, but aside from that, Kilkenny usually do actually win these games fairly handily.
Yeah, and before I get on to this game, if we get slaughtered on Monday morning because of Offaly getting hammered, I do apologise. I probably inflicted that on the two of you. That's no bother at all. Yeah, I suppose in Corrigan Park, you'd expect Antrim to be a bit better here than they would be on the road. But to their credit, they didn't lie down in Wexford Park. They were only 3 or 4 points down a few minutes into the second half as well. They had Keelan Malloy had a good goal chance, which deflected over the bar. Now, the 2 goals they could see that could have been avoided. Lee Chin was on fire, obviously, but I think they could take a lot from the game as well. Keelan Malloy, like I said, had a good game. James Naughton is still a danger man for them. So they will feel like they can put on a performance here, but being realistic, I don't see them pushing Kilkenny to the brink. I think Kilkenny are still the best side in Leinster, and they'll probably be the only side in a way in Leinster that wouldn't be too phased by Corrigan Park. Yeah, I don't see them having too many issues with Antrim. I know obviously Adrian Mullen and Shane Murphy went off injured. Obviously TJ Reid didn't play last weekend either, and I still don't see them having too many issues with Antrim this weekend. But Antrim at the same time won't hold back. You would hope for their sake that they start like they did against Laois in the league rather than the Waterford game. Because if they start like they did against Waterford, then this game could be over within the opening 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. I think it's like, obviously with Antrim being at home, like sometimes that can make these games a little bit tougher and a little bit closer maybe than, you know, what it would be, for example, if Kilkenny were playing Antrim in Nolan Park. But as Liam was saying there, Matthew, like you would expect this to be a fairly comfortable win for Kilkenny. Like it might be 8 or 9 maybe, like at best, but you would imagine really if Kilkenny are on it, they could win this by 15 or even 20 plus.
Yeah, and I think a few years ago, correct me for Bron, no, but I think Kilkenny actually went up to Corrigan Park and slaughtered Antrim anyway. Yeah. And that was the year they reached the All-Ireland final. I know Kilkenny aren't as good as they were back then. That's probably obvious, but Antrim have probably regressed since then as well, which is a bad sign. And yeah, I think Kilkenny should win this comfortably enough. And added on to the fact as well, Waterford went up to Corrigan Park in the league and pumped them. So do I think Antrim have improved from the league to this day? I don't think so. And unfortunately, I think it could be a rude awakening for Davy Fitz's side. Kilkenny could win this by 10 plus, in my opinion. Will be 20 plus. Depends what team Kilkenny put out. They could put out a B team. We don't know. Yeah. So that could reduce the margin a small bit, I guess. But regardless, it should be a Kilkenny win easily enough.
Yeah. Like they might rotate a little bit, but I still think they'll go strong enough. And I think score difference, as we've seen down the years, plays a massive part. And I think Kilkenny getting a big win here could definitely make a difference there. We'll run through some of the Joe McDonagh Cup games before we run over to the football. We've got Down versus Laois. First of all, Liam, I mean, Laois probably be slight favourites maybe, but like Down obviously had a great league, but then again Down took an absolute hiding against Carlow. So if that's anything to go by, Laois should have enough.
Yeah, and to be fair to Down, they put up a really good performance in the first half against Carlow. They were only 4 points down at half-time, to the best of my knowledge. And obviously, look, Carlow were fairly dominant in the second half. They got 5 goals. But I suppose, look, when you look at the quality that Carlow have, you've your James Doyles, you've your Marty Kavanaghs, your Paddy Bolins, like they are terrific players. They're players that really could be playing for any team in the Leinster Championship. So I suppose in a way, it wasn't really a total surprise that the scoreline ended up as it did. But I think Down could have certainly taken a lot from that game, and they certainly could have taken a lot from the Joe McDonagh last year. You know, like even though we went up there with a B team after reaching the Joe McDonagh final, they scored 325 against us. You know, so they have a real good attacking presence. They drew at Westmeath last year, so I don't think there's any reason for Down to fear Laois, especially if this was in Port Laois, kind of like what it was last year. Laois scored 7 goals. I'd be a small bit concerned for them, but I don't think there's any reason for Down to be in any way fearful playing Laois at home. Now, look, I do think Laois will come away with the win. I mean, you look at some of the players that Laois have. I mean, your Paddy Purcell is one of the best hurlers, I think, genuinely in the country. I think it's kind of unfortunate that he's playing in the Joe McDonagh and not in the Leinster Championship. But he's a terrific player. Ger Quinlan's a good underage player. You have Aidan Corby, you have Tomas Keys, who I rate very highly, especially after kind of seeing him for the first time in the Laois Senior Hurling Final 2 years ago when he scored a hat-trick for Camross. So, yeah, no, I think Laois will probably have enough for Down this weekend, but I certainly would give Down a chance of putting it up to Laois. I certainly don't see them being bet by half-time or anything like that. I think Laois, just with the quality that they have in attack, and they do have a strong defence as well. I mean, Westmeath got their goal in the last minute last weekend, and it was, a 21-yard free essentially. So, like, it was game over at that stage. They defended well in patches as well. So, yeah, no, I think Laois will come away with the win this weekend, but I think Down will give it socks, 100%.
Yeah, and you've got Kildare versus Westmeath. I mean, Matthew, maybe a couple of weeks ago, you might have looked at this as maybe a bit of a banana skin for Westmeath, but after Kerry beating Kildare, does this make it like more of a foregone conclusion, or do you think Kildare playing at home do have the chance to pull off a big win?
This is a very difficult one to predict because, like, Westmeath have the potential to, nowadays, like, Westmeath have some excellent forwards and they're obviously the top scorers charts, the likes of Killian Doyle, the likes of David Williams. But for some reason, they kind of struggle against these small sides away from, and I don't want to call Kildare, that's probably disrespectful now, but sides that would be, I would say, higher Christy Ring, lower Joe McDonagh standard. Westmeath struggle against these sides away from home. I don't know what it is, but they did draw against Down, I think, last year away from home, and they have a tendency to do it. Having said that, though, Kildare, that loss against Kerry, I saw the clips of that on Clubber as well. They looked absolutely distraught coming off the pitch against Kerry. And I think it was generally that it was just a shock of it to lose to a Kerry team that are staying in Division 2A next season. They lost their best players. Shane Conway wasn't even playing. Fiona McKessie's gone to Kilkenny. You were thinking this is slam dunk for Kildare. They didn't manage to do it. But that could bring an onus for them to go on and win this game as well, because they won't have too many home games from here to the end of the Joe McDonagh campaign. And this might be a big chance to save their season in a way. So, in a way, it's kind of a situation I kind of back Kildare, but Westmeath have some excellent hurlers. I don't see Westmeath kind of struggling in any universe. When you look at the talent, the players that they have at their disposal, it should be way too good for Joe McDonagh standard. I could see a draw in this one. I think Kildare could go ahead at half time and then Westmeath could peg it back in the second half with their good scores and things like that. So I think this is a draw. It could be a draw this weekend, and both sides will have a point on the board at least.
Yeah, Dylan makes a good point as well here. Last year, Westmeath lost to Kerry at Mullingar. So, like it definitely could happen there. And speaking of Kerry, they're playing Carlow at home. Like, I suppose realistically, lads, like, you couldn't see anything other than a Carlow win here, or do any of you think that Kerry might cause a shocker or make it a bit of a game?
No, I think it was a good win by Kerry last weekend, and it's certainly one I wasn't actually expecting. I thought Kildare would have actually beaten Kerry last weekend, but like Matthew said, when you lose the likes of Fionn McAsee, when the likes of Shane Conway's not playing. Now, look, they still had some good players out last weekend, of course. Your Pádraig Boyles, who's still a terrific player for Kerry on his day, scored 1-7 last weekend. So he'll certainly want to try and help Kerry as best he can. But when you look at the talent that Carlow have at their disposal, they really should be disposing Kerry fairly easily. Like Carlow are a team for me that should be, again, a team that should be playing in the Leinster or they're a team that's good enough to be playing Leinster Championship hurling. And yeah, I just think the likes of James Doyle, the likes of Marty Kavanagh's, and then Conor Keogh's, I think they'll just have your Chris Nolan's as well, who I forgot to mention as well. Like I just think when you look at the attacking talent that they have, I think Carlow should have enough for Kerry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree, which is there. We'll move over to the weekend's football championship action, and we'll start with the Ulster Championship. So I suppose we'll start by taking a look at Armagh versus Tyrone, which feels like the kind of big game out of all the 4 games that are taking place this weekend. This feels like the most even, or the 2 sides that are, like kind of probably most even or something of that nature. Albeit, look, we'll get onto Meath and Dublin, and maybe that might be closer than people think as well. But Matthew, Armagh, Tyrone, no love lost between these two. Massive rivalry. When you think about it down the years, and it feels like it's interesting with Armagh and Tyrone over the last couple of years, because last year Armagh won the All-Ireland and that was their peak. But I think Tyrone were nowhere near the races. And you could argue when Tyrone won the All-Ireland last in 2021, Armagh hadn't reached the levels, obviously, that we saw last year. So it feels like this is the first time these two are playing each other in Championship where they're both at their best. And this potentially makes it one of the games of the weekend. And who knows, maybe even beyond that.
And to add to that, when you look at their shooting accuracies in the quarterfinals, I think myself and Seamus mentioned this a few weeks ago. Armagh's shooting accuracy was 81% against Antrim, and Tyrone's was 75% against Cavan. And if those 2 stats are replicated this weekend, we should have an absolute barn burner of a game. These 2 sides are going in with good form. Like Armagh obviously have some stuff behind the scenes, which obviously we won't mention in this podcast now, but they did show their worth on the pitch against Antrim, to be fair to them, even with a B team kind of out. Tomas McCormack did very well in staking his claim. I think Callum O'Neill did very well in midfield as well. Rory Grugan, one of the most experienced players in the team, scored 8 points the last day. Oisin O'Neill came on and got 6 points and did very well from an Armagh point of view, and Dane to score 134 on top of that. Antrim or not, that is a really good tally. You look at Tyrone then, and I think Paul Flynn described it brilliantly on the Sunday game in his analysis after the Cavan game. And he said that Tyrone were boringly good. And I was thinking about that comment. That is so bang on, because Tyrone, you look at their statistics and everything, they were so good. But looking at the game, it looked well over nearly at halftime. Tyrone were kind of going through the pace. Yes, Cavan made a bit of a comeback, and then Con Kilpatrick scores that goal, and that's basically it then. But I've said this a few weeks now, Tyrone are peaking at the right time. They do have some good players in their team. Con Kilpatrick and Brian Kennedy are probably one of the best midfield partnerships in the country, and they seem to dominate midfield to end games and things like that. I think Niall Morgan's absolutely brilliant in goal. The full back line has stayed the same throughout the whole year. You look at Peter Teague in the full back line, Niall Devlin in the cornerback role as well, and Aidan Clark. That has been the same full back line in League Championship, which is good to have from a Tyrone point of view. Peter Hart has done really well since he's come back from the club scene. What will be very interesting to see is if Darragh Canavan's going to be fit for this, because he wasn't fit for the Cavan game. If he is fit, it's going to be a barn burner. But I think if he isn't fit, I'm not saying Tyrone will lose the game automatically, but I think it's a major one-up to Armagh then, because Darragh Canavan is an absolutely incredible footballer and kind of one that Tyrone can't afford to lose. Rory Canavan has potential to go on a high ceiling as well. Darren McCurry scored 5 points for play the last day against Cavan. And as well as that, Tyrone didn't score any 2-pointers against Cavan, but they still look very comfortable. And you look at sides in the last few weeks. Dublin only won by 9 points against Wicklow. Kerry obviously struggled against Cork. Yes, Cork put in an amazing display in Munster, but Kerry still only won that game by a kick of a ball. Mayo haven't looked very convincing in this championship. Donegal, to an extent, haven't looked that convincing in some games. When Tyrone have got a confidence going, they look very convincing. And I would say Cavan and Cork, as shown in the league, are on the same level, really. You look at Kerry's performance against Cork, and you look at Tyrone's performance against Cavan. Tyrone put Cavan away at ease. And I don't think it's just down to Cavan performing poorly. I genuinely think this Tyrone team is peaking at the right time now. It'd be very interesting to see from an Armagh point of view as well. I doubt Rian O'Neill will be back in the team, but will they get other players back in? Will Conor Turbot, I know he played a small bit, or he didn't play any part against Antrim. Will he come back into the team? If he does, that's a huge kind of onus for Armagh. Will Jardy O'Byrne's play in midfielder? Will they stick with Callum O'Neill there? It's going to be very, very interesting to see how many kind of youngsters that did well against Antrim will actually start this game against Tyrone. I'm really looking forward to this. This has the potential to be an absolute bar burner of a game. I'm really looking forward to it. Obviously, a lot of people are complaining it's on GA+, but as we mentioned with Offaly and Galway earlier, that's not even on TV. That's not available anywhere. At least this is available on GA+, and I'll be sure to watch this on Saturday. It's going to be a cracker.
No, I agree as well. It would have been criminal if it wasn't on anywhere. And it probably is quite harsh that people who don't have GA+ won't get to see it. Personally, I'm happy it's on a Saturday, so I will actually be able to watch it properly. With the Dublin game being on the Sunday. But Brian says here, Armagh Tyrone, this is the biggest and an even match game and difficult to call. Sean says, I'm worried about the injuries and that Armagh may have, but I think they have the experience and know how to get through this game. Tyrone were dominant versus Cavan, but Cavan were poor. And they also say here, Armagh Tyrone is a very hard one to call. It is so tough to call, Liam, and you could go either way on it. Armagh, to be fair, have had some really, really big performances this year. One of them was against Tyrone in the league as well, albeit it was quite early on in the league. But Tyrone as well, especially with Armagh being All-Ireland champions, I just don't see a world where Tyrone aren't going to be bang up for this. But even as Sean was saying there, Armagh might have a bit more cuteness to come through it.
Yeah, and I certainly hope this game lives up to the hype and gives us a treat, to be honest with you. This would be a fitting Ulster final clash. But for me, I actually think I backed Armagh to win the Ulster title, and I think they will come out on top in this one. But at the same time, I would not be shocked if Tyrone did manage to squeeze their way through it. Look, Armagh won the All-Ireland. They've got over the line, and now I have a feeling they'll be going all out in order to undo the wrongs of losing the previous few Ulster finals, especially the ones they lost on penalties as well. A second bite of Donegal, I think, will be on their minds, albeit if Donegal get passed down. But they will need to be wary of the threat of Tyrone. Their game against Cavan, truth be told, it was absolutely nothing spectacular, but they made it comfortable for themselves. Like you said, they were boringly very good, but it was good for them to have McShane back and getting minutes under his belt. We all know the danger of Matty Donnelly. Obviously, the fitness of O'Callaghan will be crucial to them as well. Darren McCurry and Kieran McGeary played very well. So, yeah, I could kind of similarly to maybe Meath when they faced Offaly. If Armagh allowed Tyrone to stay either in front and gain some momentum like they did against Antrim, I think, it could be from getting away from it this time. The same way I feel like if Meath had a first half against Dublin like they did against Offaly, then it could have been curtains. I just have, I think it'll be a very interesting game. Tyrone will certainly be up for it as well. They don't like Armagh at all. Armagh don't like them. So, but if Tyrone performed anything like they did in the league game, which I backed Tyrone to win, by the way, I think it'll be a very, very tough evening for them. But at the same time, look, that was also Armagh's first game since being All-Ireland champions at home as well. So you probably have to take that bit of a factor into it as well. But yeah, if you can get Canavan fit, the two Canavans fit, then it could be a completely different game. But if is it Rory? Sorry, Rory's not 100% fit yet, isn't it? Yeah. So he's not 100% fit, then it could be not a long afternoon, but you'd certainly be fancying Armagh a small bit more just because of the major difference he could make in the forward line. But yeah, I'm gonna back Armagh to maybe get the job done, but they will have to perform a lot better than what they did in the first half against Antrim the last day.
Yeah, it does have the makings potentially of extra time, maybe even beyond that as well. There is so little between them. Brian says, I'd say Armagh will be eager to win Ulster, given how they lost the last two finals on penalties. Yeah, what would you be thinking then, Matthew, in terms of a call? I'm going to back Armagh by the smallest of margins. I think they have a bit more in attack overall. I think physically they're a little bit stronger as well. And as you said, with Tyrone maybe having some injuries as well, I think that could be a key factor. But what do you think of Matthew?
I'm going against the grain. I would think, considering a lot of people are backing Armagh and Liam is saying Armagh will win Ulster. I like to look at this Tyrone team, lads. I think Tyrone will win this. I just think they're in very, very good form. And I do think if Darragh Canavan is fit for this game, I think that's even more of a kind of maybe even sure of a prediction that Tyrone are going to win this. I think it's going to be tight, obviously. It could take extra time. And it could be a game of the year contender. We talked about Cork and Kerry last week, but this game could topple it. I genuinely think so. And especially, I don't know what the weather conditions are going to be like on Saturday, but if it's a sunny day, this is going to be an absolutely incredible game of football. I think this is the makings of the Tyrone win, to be honest with you. I think Tyrone could win this by 1 or 2 points. It's going to be tight, obviously. Could take extra time. I think Tyrone have it, though. I think Tyrone will win this game. They look hungry, they look sharp, and they look ready to go. I do think Tyrone will win this game.
Yeah, Sean actually had a good comment here. What do you guys think of the final? Beating in Croker, granted Armagh, Donegal win. Yeah, like it is a little bit mad that it will only be if Armagh and Donegal win. And I think that's mainly looking off of attendances from the last couple of years in terms of both of those two counties, because they've drawn in more attendances than some of the other counties. But yeah, like my opinion on it is mixed, to be honest with you. I think it's like I think if it means more fans get to go to the game, then I think it's a good idea. But at the same time, it also is very harsh on those supporters having to make the trip down to Dublin when it usually is in Ulster. I also think as well there is something about an Ulster final being in Clonus. Like there is just something. It's like the Munster hurling final being in Munster. Like you could have the Munster hurling final in Croke Park. It would definitely sell out. You'd probably nearly get a fully packed stadium. But I think it takes the occasion away from what it should be. What do you think about that, Liam? We'll come to you on that first.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up after we discussed down to Donegal, but I suppose, yeah. I can understand that it's worked in the past with having provincial finals in Croke Park. That's not Leinster. And yes, Armagh and Donegal would bring huge crowds, like you said, to Dublin. Like it could even sell out, to be honest with you, considering the magnitude of the game, and they both travel well and both their teams are going for success at the moment. But for me, I am just not a fan of this concept. I think the Ulster decider being outside of Ulster, like you said, it should be in Clonus, or if it's not in Clonus, it should be somewhere in Ulster. I wasn't a huge supporter of the Leinster hurling final replay being in Thurles in 2018 when Galway played Kilkenny, and I can't say I'll be the biggest supporter of this final being played in Dublin. Like you said, it's a long travel. I believe it's going to be on a Saturday night as well, which is even trickier for parents if they want to bring kids as well. And you think of the expenses as well, trying to get to Dublin in comparison to Clonus. But maybe it'll be a great idea. I don't know. But for me, not the biggest fan of it, I think. And especially with the fact that it'll only be for if Armagh and Donegal get to the final. Like, if you're Tyrone or down, you'd be there thinking, well, not that we want it there maybe, but Jesus, writing us off, saying that we don't get a day out maybe in Croke Park as well, probably could be pissing them off as well, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it, to be honest.
Yeah, like, and just on that Matthew as well, like I feel like if Down were to get to an Ulster final, they would bring huge numbers. Like they brought huge numbers, I remember, to the Tailteann Cup. So like I feel like the GAA, I don't know, like are they just assuming like Donegal will probably win the game, and they should win the game, and I think all of us do think that they will win the game, but like it's not a foregone conclusion. Like it's not done and dusted. Like Down could win it, and I still think Down will bring huge fans. And look, maybe Tyrone would as well if they get through Armagh. So it's a little bit strange that it's just Armagh and Donegal going to an Ulster final in Croker, not the two. Like it's a little bit odd that, I think, but
yeah, it is kind of, to be honest with you, and yeah, I agree with Liam in terms of travel expenses and things like that, and probably the logistics behind the journey as well. But you kind of have to take into consideration as well that Clonus isn't the biggest of grounds to host, let's say, an Armagh and Donegal final, because we've already had Armagh fans complaining about a game being in Cork Park. Imagine the Ulster final kind of demand for tickets. So that wouldn't be nasty, or it would be nasty on social media. It wouldn't be nice, really. So you have to think of kind of that element as well. And you make a good point, Darren, of Down. Obviously, Dave's a big support as well. And I think if Tyrone are going well, there's an argument they have a decent enough support to go to games as well. So Like the Ulster final is obviously going to be a glitz and glam of colour, obviously, whoever is in the final. So I think it is strange to kind of pick out those two counties and say, if these two reach the final, the game's on Croke Park. Obviously, did it work back then when Tyrone and Armagh were playing the Ulster final in the noughties? It may be a small bit. They garnered about 60,000 people. Obviously, it wasn't a full house, but there was a reason for that, obviously, because of travel expenses. Like the only times it'd been in Croke Park, obviously, was the noughties when Ulster football was on a booming high after Tyrone and Armagh winning all the All-Irelands, Armagh in 02, Tyrone in 03 and 05. And obviously the COVID year in 2021 with Tyrone and Monaghan. Obviously the COVID year was the correct decision there. But there is kind of a sense of maybe kind of money grabbing in this. But at the same time, thinking of the fans and thinking to get as many fans into the ground as possible. But is there an argument as well? The Clonus might be small though. But is there an argument to say the Clonus would garner a much better atmosphere than Croke Park? Because if Croke Park has 50 or 60,000, then the atmosphere would kind of be lost in the ground. Whereas a full house in Clonus would be absolutely unreal. And a lot of people in Ulster, and they've chatted to me off air and things like that, I've chatted to former Ulster players that have actually played in Ulster Vinyl and said, funnily enough, and they would have said, that has to be on your bucket list, an Ulster Vinyl in Clonus. And because it's a full house and it garners a bit of atmosphere, that kind of element would be taken out of the Ulster Championship if it is to be moved to Croke Park. So you could go either both ways, but I'd be more on the side in keeping it in Clonus just to keep the kind of tradition there. Maybe there's a lot more traditionalists then, a lot more people that want a 60,000 capacity in the stadium or whatever. But look, I just think Clonus is a lot more traditional for an Ulster final and it has to be kept that way.
Yeah, Brian says here as well, it's a major loss to Clonus if Armagh Donegal is in Croke Park, given the big fan base you can understand. It will be on a Saturday evening, given the Leinster final is scheduled for Sunday. Yeah, look, like I do agree. Like obviously the selfish part of me thinks that, you know, it would be nice to go to an Ulster final, and if it's in Croke Park, I probably would be able to get a ticket for it. Whereas in Clonus, like it would just be impossible. As it should be, to be fair, because those supporters should be the ones who are prioritized, to be fair, over you know, just neutrals. But yeah, like it is an interesting one, and it will be interesting to see what happens. I do have a funny feeling, regardless of what happens, I think they might put it in Croke Park anyway, even if it is down Tyrone in the final, let's just say. I do have a funny feeling they'll go and put it in Croke Park anyway. But yeah, it's it is a little bit mad to be fair. But yeah, the other game is Down versus Donegal. I suppose, lads, like you would be backing Donegal to come through and win the game. What would you be thinking on this one, Liam?
Yeah, I didn't see much of the second half in the Monaghan win, with Brannigan's side almost pulling off a huge comeback and probably wanting to thump the referee afterwards. But I think Donegal looked like slick with their full forward line. Well, I saw the majority of the first half, and they looked very slick with their full forward line. Their movement, their shooting was excellent. Their defending was good against a very well organised Monaghan side. Down literally came back from the dead against Fermanagh, which I couldn't believe, and they will take something from that. But they also gave up a very distant lead that they had built up. And for me, they'll put up a huge fight, but I just don't see anything but a repeat of last year's Ulster decider. I just think Donegal, with the forward line that they have and the form that they're all in as well, some of the 2-pointers that they were kicking at the weekend as well, I don't see anything but Jim McGuinness's side returning, and especially with Jim McGuinness's record in Ulster as well, I don't see that being tarnished in any way anytime soon.
Yeah, just on that match here, like Donegal looked flawless really in more ways than one against both Monaghan and against Derry. Like Down caused Armagh a lot of problems last year, but I think one big part to kind of playing that, it was in the old rules, like, and they were very defensive in that game. I don't think they'll be able to be sort of as defensive in this game. So like, you couldn't really see anything other than a comfortable Donegal win. No,
you couldn't really, and it's just the level that Down are on at the moment, unfortunately, obviously going down from Division 2 to Division 3. There are some good parts in Down, like the likes of Pat Haver and Oran Murdoch. Daniel Guinness is a superb footballer and scored 1-4 and showed it against Fermanagh in large spades, obviously, and Roy McAvoy as well. But I think like it's just the level Donegal are on right now. Like I think honestly, Donegal are probably one of the top teams in the country. And if you were to say Donegal win the All-Ireland, a lot of people won't be looking at you funny because Donegal are performing well at the moment. They'd be up at the level of Galway, Kerry, Tyrone, or an Armagh. Whereas Down are just a lower level. In my opinion, I don't think they're a Division 3 team, but they are a lower level Division 2 team. And I just think that'll be the difference that we'll show this weekend, unfortunately, for Down. But if Down can compete with Donegal for large spells of the game, I do think it would give them a lot of confidence going to the All-Ireland group stage. Obviously, they knew going into the season anyway, regardless of how well they did in the league, that they would have been an All-Ireland Sam Maguire team anyway because of their Tailteann Cup win last year. So they need this kind of performance to compete against Donegal. They have competed against Roscommon. They've beaten Cork in the league. They competed. They obviously beat Monaghan in the league as well, which is very good. Obviously, Monaghan could have been risking a few players and things like that. So maybe you take that with a pinch of salt, maybe. But this is the first Division 1 side from this year that Down will be playing for this season, and it will show in a way how far Down have come. I know they got very close in Division 2 to staying up. They ultimately didn't, though. 6 points is still a very good margin to have in Division 2. I don't think Down were a bad team, and I don't think Donegal will absolutely slaughter them this weekend. But I do think Donegal will just have too much class to get over the line. I think they'll win this by about 5 or 6 points, but probably won't be any more than that, given the Down will probably want to acquit themselves well going to the All-Ireland series, be probably a seed 4 side.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd agree with you on that one. Moving across to the Leinster Football Championship, Meath versus Dublin, taking place in Portlaoise. I was speaking to Davy Rispin from We Are Meath podcast a little bit earlier, and there is a sense that like it's not like I feel like with Dublin and Meath games in the past, you wouldn't even bat an eyelid. You'd be like, Dublin will win this hands down, very, very comfortable, very, very easy. You know, it'll be 10, 15, maybe 20 plus points. Obviously, there are a few different factors kind of going into this one. First of all, it's outside Croke Park, so it's in Portlaoise. Second of all, Meath have looked very good this year, especially with 2-pointers as well. They've been absolutely outstanding in terms of some of the 2-pointers they've kicked. But then as well, you have the fact that Dublin didn't look their best versus Wicklow. Like Liam, you obviously seen them against Offaly close up and in the flesh. Is there a chance that they could pull off the greatest of shocks, or will it still be Dublin who come through, given on Sunday?
I think a lot of neutral fans are hoping and praying that even if Meath were not to win this weekend, that they are still somewhat competitive, just for the sake of the Leinster Championship, really. But I just worry that what we saw from Meath in the opening 35 minutes against Offaly. Now, I get that Dublin were not 100% at the races fully against Wicklow, but if we're being 100% honest, there really wasn't any danger in Dublin really losing that encounter either. On the other hand, you could not have said the same about Meath after 35 minutes in Navan. Like, Offaly caused Meath issues in Navan, and if Meath allowed themselves to be 10 points down after the opening 35 minutes again, kick only 5 points in the first half, like they did against us, then it will be night for them, because Dublin they'll be a lot more ruthless than what we should have been. It'll be interesting to see how this does fare away from Croke Park. However, Dublin, to their credit, they do travel when needed. They bring a huge crowd behind them as well when their games have been taken away from Croke Park. And I still see them having just too much for Meath. Now, look, I don't know whether Morris will be fit for this game. I'm not 100% sure. Meath do still have a bit of frailties at the back. Giving opportunities away cheaply to the attack of Dublin's calibre will spark problems for them. Like, I mean, you give any chance to Conor Callahan, you give chances to Colin Baskell, to Kieran Kilkenny, to Sean Bugler, it could be too much for Meath potentially to handle. But yeah, I do hope that for the sake of Leinster football, to be honest with you, that I am wrong. You'll be hoping that the likes of Costello can do the bits for them, or Frayne or Connor Duke as well, who kicked a good few 2-pointers against us. But I can see the Croke Park factor having small bit of an impact, but like I said, Dublin travel well even when they are away from Croke Park. And they've played in O'Moore Park a few times over the last couple of years as well. So it's not like they're not used to that venue either. So I think it'll be a lot more competitive than what it has been over the last 10, 15 years. And it desperately needs to be for Leinster football to be somewhat, let's be honest, relevant again, to be honest with you. But I just think it's too soon for me. I think given some, and especially when you saw even how they played in the league as well, in some of their more high profile games. I know they bet Roscommon, but I just think they're just a few steps behind Dublin at the moment. But I certainly give them a chance of putting up a good fight against them. But yeah, I just think Dublin are still just the best side in Leinster by a mile at the moment. I'd actually think the team that would stop them at the moment, the closest team to stop it to them, is actually the team on the other side of the draw.
Yeah, I think overall, like Dublin, like I would still expect Dublin to come through this game relatively comfortably. Like I still think it'll be a 7, probably 8-point lead. Like I think yes, they're Meath have improved, and yes, they have looked a lot better. But I still think there is still quite a gap between the two counties, in my opinion. Dublin were sluggish against Wicklow, but I do think the large part of that was due to obviously coming back from Portugal, a camp and everything else. I thought the lads looked a little bit jaded, a little bit knackered. And a lot of time as well, like when Dublin click into gear in the championship, a lot of the time it actually has been against Meath, funnily enough. And I think you will see some of those kind of big players step up. But Matthew as a neutral, like I mean, we, to be fair, like we saw what Cork could do against Kerry. Like, is there any? Could Meath even take some inspiration from that? Do you think?
They can, absolutely. But this is probably a question that, and it's a question I asked Cork fans at the end of the game as well. Coincidentally, I know being Dublin had no kind of relevance in that Cork and Kerry game, but I'm thinking, how could Cork always put it up to Kerry year on year on year, losing by 2-3 points or whatever, and obviously losing after extra time the other day, probably should have won that game. Yet when Meath play against Dublin, they fall down. I actually don't really get it, and I do think what will be a massive help. It's only small, but obviously playing this game at Portlaoise will massively help Meath. Because of obviously smaller ground. Dublin aren't used to it, obviously. As we mentioned there, yes, they do bring a large fan base, as they always do for a road trip, obviously, the Dublin fans. But I think Meath will be a lot more comfortable in Portlaoise than Dublin will. And actually, coincidentally, I think Colin Parks put up a tweet saying that Meath are actually 7-1 on to win, according to the odds. That's the small. And to be honest, according to Colin Parks, that according to myself, funny enough as well, that is probably the lowest I've ever seen it in terms of odds. So is there a chance? I don't know, but I think what we need to do and what they need to do to replicate Cork's performance last week is something small now, but just get stuck into Dublin. Like Cork weren't necessarily winning the kick-out battle against Kerry. They weren't necessarily shooting properly, but by God, they got stuck into Kerry. And they get stuck into Kerry each and every year. You look at Meath last year against Dublin, and I've discussed it with Seamus and yourself as well about this. And the one thing I noticed with Meath, there's just no bite in them. Like even in when I go back to last year's game, as soon as Sean Bogler hit the net last year at Croke Park, that was like, that's it. We may as well pack up the bags and leave here. And what kind of cemented it for me in terms of the attitude when you compare it from a Cork attitude against Kerry to a Meath attitude against Dublin. A Meath player comes on last year, I think it was James Conlon, or it might have been someone else from Meath. He comes onto the pitch, shakes the Dublin player's hand. It's like, lads, this is a rivalry. You need to get stuck into these players. You need to get stuck into your rivals here. Where the Cork player, you look at the exchange between Brian O'Driscoll and Paddy Clifford when Paddy Clifford was going off for the red card. We need to bring that aggression at the weekend to have any chance of winning this game. Do I think they can? I think they can. Robbie Brennan's an excellent coach, and I do think they can do that. Another thing as well, which Cork did very well, which I think Meath could bring, is 2-pointers. Cork had 6 against Kerry compared to Kerry's 1. You look at Meath's panel at the moment, Jack Flynn, Matthew Costello, Rory Kinsella, they're all capable of hitting 2-pointers. Whereas Dublin, I know Con's there, but is there anybody else that can really hit 2-pointers with Dublin? It remains to be seen. I think if Meath are going to attack this Dublin side, I think 2-pointers is paramount. I think the aggression is paramount. Obviously, shooting accuracies and kick-out strategies is going to be massive as well. And belief, genuine belief you're going to beat Dublin. You can't just go into a game and as soon as Dublin score a goal, just give up. I don't think Meath will do that. But they need to stay focused throughout the game, even if, let's say, Niall Scully palms the ball into the back of the net, Meath's heads can't drop. They have to keep going and keep going to the final whistle at that as well, and have that kind of bounce back ability. Having said all that, though, I do think Dublin will have enough to get over the line. I'm hopeful that this game will be a tight one, because it's what the Leinster Championship does need. And I'm sure yourself, Seamus, any other Dublin fan would think the same thing. Hopefully Meath will bring the fire, bring the thunder, and bring an all-around good game of football. So it should be a game looking forward to. Hopefully Meath will bring something to it. I think Dublin will have enough at the end of the day, but hopefully the margin will be under 5 points. I'm hoping and praying it will be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, like even don't get me wrong, I want Dublin to win the game, but you want this rivalry to come back, in my opinion. I think it's a sleeping giant of a rivalry, in my opinion, and I think if it could come back, look, you could argue we might need a Meath win to kind of really ignite the rivalry, and I'm certainly not wanting that to happen. But at the same time, I do think it's a rivalry that does need to be reignited. But as you said, in terms of the rivalry, Meath have always just looked defeated against Dublin a lot of the time, and I feel like they're a confidence team as well. And as I was saying to Davey a little bit earlier as well, they are a team that if Dublin start this game very strong and go 5, 6, 7, 8 points up inside 20 minutes, they'll probably win this by 10, 12, maybe even 15 points, because Meath's heads will drop. And not to rub salt in the wounds, Liam, but I think Dublin won't make the mistake that Offaly made, and they'll put them to the sword. Do you know what I mean? And they'll completely crush them. But yeah, no, I do agree with you as well. I think Dublin should have enough to come through the game. We've got Kildare versus Louth, which is the last game to discuss. I suppose, Liam, in terms of who could be joining Dublin in the Leinster final. I mean, Louth will be slight favourites. It's hard to kind of know where Kildare are at. Obviously, it was a big win for them versus Westmeath. What would you be thinking here?
Yeah, for Kildare to reach a Leinster final, it would be massive after their dip in the league. But their performance against Westmeath would have been a welcome to Brian Flanagan, I feel. You would hope that Kildare would be one of the sides in Leinster to dethrone Dublin, but they've been almost going backwards for years, and especially against Louth last year at the same stage. Louth just looked miles better. I know the game only ended 17-13, but Louth were much the better side last year. They were in complete control throughout the game. But with this game not being in Croke Park as well, could that play into their own hands? Because they play very well against Westmeath at home, and at Croke Park recently they've not been there. They've not been all there, to say the least. So playing this fixture in Tullamore, which, I mean, to be fair, they've not even had the best record there. They're recently losing to us and losing to Laois last year as well in the Tailteann Cup. And I think this game probably would have been more fitting if it was played in Meath, to be honest with you. It might have helped them a small bit. But yeah, Louth will be gunning to reach a third Leinster final in a row. And I do think they'll have too much for Kildare this weekend. Kildare play very nice football. And the thing is that they should, in a way, have walked away from the Division 3 final wondering how they didn't win, because at the end of the day, it was their shooting which let them down ultimately. Alex Byrne is a terrific shooter. He got some nice scores that day. He missed some howlers though. Dara Kerwin's dangerous. Dylan Hyland, when he gets a chance to push up the field like he did the last day against Westmeath, he excelled. He got a terrific 2-pointer. So they can hurt Louth through the middle. Harry O'Neill's a cornerback who I do like the look of too. So they do have enough to get the job done. But Louth, I feel, are still maybe just a couple of points ahead as we currently speak. Their under-20s had a super win last night over Dublin. And that could be a spark that they need to get over the line. And I still see them as the closest thing to Dublin in Leinster currently. Now, they didn't have Craig Lennon starting. Conor Grimes was kept quiet on the scoring front against Laois. They were also crucially missing Sam Mulroy, and Ger Brennan has said this week that he's a bit better this week, and the final few days will tell a lot. Although it's been a few weeks since he has played, I think if he's fit enough even for 10-15 minutes off the bench, that he could be a real difference maker here. So I am going to back Louth to maybe just edge this by maybe 2 points at best. Maybe I think it'll be a cracking game. I think it'll certainly be better than the encounter we had last year in Croke Park in the Leinster semi-final. But yeah, I think Louth might just have too much for Kildare in the end. But this is a massive game for Kildare though. If they can get back to a Leinster final and have another crack at Dublin, because remember Kildare were only 2 points behind Dublin as well in Croke Park 2 years ago, which is a real shock to me and a lot of I'd say a lot of Dublin fans as well. But yeah, I think Louth might just have enough this weekend.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. Sean says if Kildare turn up, I think they will win, but I believe Louth have more dog in them to get over the line. Yeah, I think I know Louth's under 20s are going quite strong at the moment, and they beat us the other day as well. But Like, I think Kildare probably just have a little bit more potential. In my opinion, they've another gear to kind of go up on with some of the younger players. I don't know if it's this weekend that happens. I think Louth have kind of been here and done it a little bit more. Maybe with the new rules, that might favour Kildare a little bit more. What would you be thinking, Matthew?
I would say, like, Tyrone and Armagh, we talked about being the most entertaining game of the weekend. I think this is the most crucial game of the weekend, considering the ramifications here, because the winner of this not only goes to the Leinster final, but gets the last spot at the Armagh Cup. It's all riding on this game now. So, and get a C2 in the Armagh at least. You would say a C2, obviously, because I don't think either side are beating Dublin in the Leinster final. So this is a crucial game for both sides. I think, in a way, I think it's more crucial to Kildare than it is to Louth, because if Kildare spend another year in the Tailteann Cup, I'm not sure will that be appreciated in Kildare. Whereas if Louth are to drop down to the Tailteann Cup, there's a massive chance that they could win that competition, and it would be a successful few years for Louth, considering the All-Ireland quarter-final appearance last year. They've done well in the Armagh Cup. See if they could win the Tailteann Cup and see what they could prove there. I think if Samuel Roy is fit for this game, I do think Louth have a massive chance of winning it. But if he's not fit, I think Kildare have an upper hand in this one, because you do have, obviously, if Alex Byrne, obviously, as Liam mentioned, in brilliant form at the moment. Derek Kieran wasn't the greatest form against Westmeath, but you'd imagine he'd be back up to form in this one if he is to stake a claim and be one of the main players for Kildare. Jimmy Hyland, I don't know what's the story with him. Is he going to play for this game? Is he injured? Not entirely sure there. You do with some good players in this Kildare team. Obviously, Harry O'Neill, obviously wishing him the best luck in terms of his injury recovery. I'm not sure is he going to recover from that pretty bad injury it looked like against Westmeath. But even then, Tommy Gill came on and did very, very well, the young under 20. So, look, Kildare do have players like Kevin Feely gets confidence as well. I do think he has the potential to maraud the guys as well. And another point, like if that game against Westmeath could give Kildare a lot of confidence, in my opinion, because too many times we mentioned Kildare against sides in and around their level or just below their level, against Clare, against Laois, against Offaly over the last few years, and they lost each and every single one of them times. They beat Westmeath, who are a decent side. I know they haven't won in a while, but they are a decent side. That might be give them a bit of confidence to go on and win this game. It's a very tough one to call. I'd edge it to Kildare slightly because I think they have more potential in them and they have more of an onus to get to the Armagh Cup. But Louth, if they get Samuel Roy back in the team, there's always the potential that they can be Kildare for the second year running.
Yeah, Brian says here, Luke Bratnock, Conor Tyrrell have been big finds during the league. Killian McGuinness also a big find just in relation to some of the Dublin players who made the kind of breakthrough there. Louth won this fixture last year, and still I'd say it'd be a Dublin Louth final. Yeah, no, I do agree as well. I just fancy Louth to ever so slightly nick it, but I definitely think there is a chance for Kildare to do it, and I wouldn't be entirely surprised if Kildare did get the win. So yeah, cheers anyone who tuned in. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Let us know your thoughts, your opinions on the games at the weekend. And yeah, until the next one, we will speak to you all soon.